We've got that Mommy Magic, the Mother Show on Magic 89.9.
So anyway, this is according to your LinkedIn. I'm not sure if it's updated, but he is the founder and president of the Parents School Co. And he's also the chairman of Homeschool Global Learning Inc. And hey, he was also the lead anchor and writer. I'm not sure if you know the show On the Money on ANC. Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, it was such an honor for you to be here. Such an honor for us for you to be here. I know you're so busy with the family and work and everything, and I'm just so glad that you said yes to this. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Edric Mendoza on the show.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having us. And with me is my son Elijah. Hi. The
There
eldest
he
of six.
Eldest of six.
16 all the way down. So, and you got 2.
Yeah.
You got 4 more to go. And if your husband is listening, you're putting some holy pressure on him.
4 pa.
The
Kaya yan.
eldest is 3.
Yeah.
Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you guys.
Can you go closer to the mic lang,
Yeah,
Edric?
sure.
Sayang
There, is
your-
that better?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Del, did we lose you, Del?
Thanks for having us here.
No, I'm here. I'm straining to hear our guest.
Yeah. Okay. I asked him to go closer to the mic. Sayang.
Okay.
So Edric and Elijah are here. Elijah's the eldest of the
Yes,
brood,
I'm
right?
eldest.
16. 16.
16.
Now, the reason why we have Edric here as a first guest is because 6 kids, all of them homeschooled. So Elijah,
Wow.
yeah. So Elijah's 16 already. Are you still in the?
I'm still homeschooled.
Yeah, right.
currently,
Yeah.
Still
What grade are you
homeschool.
effectively?
I'm effectively grade 11 right now.
Incoming, right?
Effectively
Incoming.
grade 11.
I just
11.
finished grade 10 stuff. I'm moving into grade 11.
Okay, so I have a question. So why did you decide to homeschool your kids?
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's the short answer is because of my wife.
Okay.
She was homeschooled.
Wow.
That's
okay.
right. So this is back in the 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
Homeschooled alongside her 4 siblings who were originally in a private Chinese school because their father's Chinese. Their mother is blonde hair, blue-eyed American.
Wow. Okay.
And there was a missionary, Christian missionary to the Philippines. So in that space, she had met a family. Joy's mom had met a family who was homeschooling. She never heard about it and saw what the family was doing. And she fell in love with it instantly. She said, I want this for my kids.
Yeah.
So she goes to her husband, Joy's dad, and asks, can I pull them out of this school and homeschool them? And my father-in-law, who is more conservative, if you will,
Yeah.
was like, nope, be in school. So, long story short, their family homeschooled.
Yeah.
And as they homeschooled, Joy had this first-hand experience and carried it with her, even into our marriage.
Wow.
When we're now deciding, okay, where do we send our son to school? Now, my background is I'm a blue boy. So, all the way. I was, my father was from the same school all the way through elementary through college. So my first instinct was to actually
Say no.
send him to the same school, right?
Yeah.
The compromise we did in preschool when he was about 3 was to send him to a preschool and then homeschool just to try it out. And then when he hit 5 or 6, that's when we would decide
Big school.
big school or pure homeschool because
Okay.
at that age they blended. So, because of the experience in that experimental period, the 3 to about 5 or 6, I saw something different. And I'll be honest with you, I was skeptical at first. I said, I don't think this is going to work for us because I had all these negative stereotypes around homeschooling.
And because you're a blue boy.
And because I had a good experience. I mean, there are
Yeah.
a number of people who maybe got burned or they had bad experiences. I had a good experience in school. So when I saw Elijah homeschooling with my wife in that experimental season, I would remember nights where he was so hungry, and if you see him, especially when he was a little boy, he had these big brown eyes.
Oh no.
And so at night, when they would be going through some studies, I would remember him saying to my wife, Mommy, I want more. And my wife would say, honey, Mommy's tired. Can we do this tomorrow? And I said, this boy really loves to learn. Because I remembered I had a good school experience, but it was very compartmentalized. I would learn in school, and then I would say, done. I would play and enjoy. So when there was no classes because of rains and all, I would be very excited because I felt like it was very structured. So to see my son love the learning experience and wanting so much more, I said, okay, this is one thing that was very different. And then the second was his character. He used to love watching these Finding Nemo DVDs. Do you remember this, Elijah?
No, I don't remember
We would
this.
with the yaya, we would help pacify. We'd play the Finding Nemo DVD,
Okay.
and then he would be eating while watching the DVD. Not the best parenting, but anyway. So, when we wanted him to stop, I would say, Elijah, stop. You need to turn off the DVD. It's time to go to bed. And with the same big brown eyes, he would say, okay, Daddy. So there was something about his obedience. And
Yeah.
I said, that's not how I remember my growing years. So in a nutshell, that kind of convinced me that in the character sense and in the learning sense, there was much more to homeschooling. And that began our journey. That's what flipped me and said, okay, let's keep going. And I have not looked back since. That was about 5 years old officially, all the way through now 16. Have
In
there been
over 10
challenges?
years?
Yes, there have been challenges, but honestly, no regrets.
No regrets.
No regrets so
Wow.
far. That's how I got involved and
So,
got convinced.
so it started with joy.
Mm-hmm.
It started with your wife, and she was homeschooled. She got a little bit of a... So she's probably always wanted to do it
Yes.
since she was little.
Am I correct?
Yes.
If she could, what would she do, Elijah? And this is the debate in our family right now. Go ahead.
If my mom had a choice and she was the one deciding the future of my education, she would homeschool me all the way through senior high school and even college.
She probably
she
would,
had
yeah,
to.
yeah.
That's how much she really stands for it and believes in it and enjoys it.
That's amazing.
I know.
Challenging.
So how does it work in your family? Is it just Joy homeschooling, or is it also you, Edric, that homeschool the kids?
Right. So did you want to explain that?
I can explain
Elijah?
a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
So for the younger kids, my mom does a lot of the homeschooling, but because there's so many of us,
Yeah.
and we've all gone through the same things, we've all learned basic arithmetic and
Okay.
reading, we can teach our younger siblings. So it actually helps mom as she has more kids. There's more helpers to help. So my brother,
Yeah.
my younger brother Eden, he makes games for the younger kids so that they can learn to train their memory, to develop math and reading skills.
Oh, so it's...
And then I sit down sometimes with the youngest and I teach her math and also reading.
So she has a team of teachers.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, what is Dad's role? That was part of their question. What do I do?
Dad's role in teaching us is not so much academics, but more on character and Bible. So every week, well, if we're able to stick to our rhythms, every week we are supposed to have a family Bible study, and we have a memory verse, and Dad discusses it with us. He's like, that's what he does for our education. He develops our character and our values.
Yeah, and between Joy and I, the deal is I'm supposed to help because part of what you need to cover if you're under an accredited program is MAPE, like in a school. Music,
Okay,
arts,
yeah,
PE.
yeah.
So I help find the classes or teachers that will help provide that for them, and of course I have to foot the bill, right? That's my job. So I am the funder and principal, if you will. Joy does the actual teaching of the subjects.
What does Joy do aside from teach the kids? Does she have another? Does she do anything else?
Like job-wise?
Yes.
No. So she also is loud on the social media space. That's
Oh, yeah.
a large part of what
Yeah.
she does. She started off blogging, and that
She's
blog
so
has-
eloquent. I'm
It's
sorry, your
Teach
wife
with
is so
Joy, right?
eloquent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Joy,
Yes.
yeah. She and when she first started that blog, I'm a business guy, so I'm all about let's monetize this, find ways to put ads. She's like, no, I want to keep it pure because she really likes to write because her background is she's an English lit major.
Wow.
She's always been a writer.
Yeah.
Before, when we were in college, without all of the tech space, she would write. And she had journals and journals and journals, which we had to bring into our home when we married, right? She took all of these things.
yeah.
And then remember this, right? With the
We
tech
have
space.
cabinets full of the journals.
Yeah, so in the tech space, when, websites and technology and blogging started, she shifted her medium of journaling now into the space. And she said, I really want to be able to share God's word and use this. So, my desire to monetize the whole thing and create ads was jumped.
Yeah.
But, it has evolved. Because of that site and her social media handles, people have done collaborations with her.
Yeah.
So if you ask what else is she doing, that's kind of it. She does those things and really takes care of the kids.
I think
homeschools.
handling
being
six
active.
kids is just
Yeah.
I mean, we have to. We have a hard time.
Right. I asked you, I'm like, who's taking care of your 7-month-old right now?
Right?
Juggling them.
And she has, and they have a 9-month-old. So,
I know.
Yeah, that's already a handful.
So
My
we were.
wife is an amazing superwoman.
I
Yeah.
believe you. I believe you.
Yeah.
So we were
So I hope
asking.
you're listening, baby.
We were asking Edric off air. He homeschooled all 5, and now he has a 9-month-old baby. You can't possibly homeschool a 9-month-old baby yet, but you can prep them for
Yes.
it, right? And this is something that I'd like you to share to all of our listeners, because I'm sure a lot of people are already considering it, and they have newborns,
Right.
babies who are not yet one. So,
Right.
how are you grooming this 9-month-old
Sure.
baby?
So I think it's important to frame homeschooling well in terms of a definition.
All right, let's do that.
So technically, a large part of our conversation now is the academic part of the homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
So what you would get in a school academically, you're now saying, I'll do this. So that is one major part of homeschooling.
Okay.
But if you really think about it, homeschooling is essentially teaching your children the things that they will need to live in the real world.
It's basic. It's
So-
that basic.
So, in that broadest sense, every good parent, and this is part of what I like to tell parents, every good parent is actually homeschooling because you're giving them principles that they will use for life. So, to your question of how are we prepping the 9-month-old, it's the same broader mindset. We're trying to ask ourselves, how do we prepare this young little baby for the real world? So, because she's so young, a large part is really just biological survival, learning to eat real food now because she's going, and I'm sure your 7-month-old is kind of transitioning there too. She will be hitting in the next couple months, and I think in our trip that we're going to be making, we're going to see this come out more. We're going to have to start developing character, and one of the most important character traits we have embraced as a family that helps not just in the homeschooling, in the academic technical sense, but in the broader sense of parenting is obedience. If we're able to instill obedience, it unlocks so many things because let's make it practical. Imagine my wife calling the 5 kids and saying, all right, kids, wake up. It's time to homeschool. If they don't obey, let's say Elijah says, nope, I'm going to put my headphones on and just do technology or gaming or whatever. And then the younger ones are like, no, I'm going to go play outside. They start screaming.
Yeah.
There's going to be madness. So we learned early on from the people who mentored us that if we want to raise children well today, we need to instill obedience. So with this 9-month-old, we're seeing she's understanding a number of our instructions already, like sit still when you're in your high chair.
Is she?
Yes. So you can see from her eyes that she's defying, right? That's what mom's
Yeah.
even saying. She's like, okay, she's getting there. So we're helping her understand obedience by saying, Kaylee, we have a song. You want to sing the song? Don't be angry. Don't be mad. You should be happy. This is a song that my wife creates. And so that basically helps her realize, okay, I can't have this
Outburst of
tantrum.
emotion.
I cannot
Yeah.
do these things at a 9-month-old level, right? As we enforce it, of course, as the kids get older, there are ways we enforce this idea of obedience so it sticks in. We have a family chant, if you will, as they grow older that goes like this: obedience brings
Blessings.
and all the kids will say blessings
Oh,
when we shout it out across 16 through 6. So 9-month doesn't really get that yet, but because that's so important.
Yeah.
And I like to tell adults, it's so important for even the older ones and us, because as I mentioned, on a practical note, if they don't instill obedience, there's a verse in the Bible that says, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right, and you will be blessed. Because if you do not, it can literally spell disaster.
Yeah.
Elijah was about to cross the road one time. We parked our car on the road, and as he was crossing, if you can imagine, there's a row of cars crossing the road. So as he's crossing through the row of cars, you can't really see the oncoming cars.
Yeah.
So he was going ahead, and big bright-eyed Elijah's kind of wandering through, and I see a speeding car, and I yell, Elijah, stop. And because he's been able to embrace obedience, he literally stops, looks back, and he says, what happened, Dad? If he had said no, or he had not obeyed and just kept walking through, he literally would have been smashed by that car. And to show you how intense this was, my wife, when she saw the car finally speed through, and we felt kind of the wind from that car passing by, and Elijah stopped, my wife started to tear because she said literally, if he did not obey and resisted even just for a split second and said no or why or what's going on and just kept walking, he would have been smashed by that car. So that's why I keep saying, and I love saying, how in prepping this 9-month-old and any of our children, one of the first things we like to focus on is obedience. The character trait of, I need to obey, because if I obey, I will be blessed. I will literally spare my life in some circumstances, right? As adults, I like to tell people as I engage them, if we want the Philippines to do well, although there is a great responsibility on the President, the Senate, and everybody who's leading, it really is up to us as individual citizens. The question I ask and I like to pose is, do we try to be the best Filipino citizens we can possibly be? Paying the right taxes, crossing where we're supposed to cross, stopping when it says red. Because if we obey, we will be blessed. The same idea, right?
I'm sure everybody in their car right now, stuck on EDSA, putting down their phone. They're like,
don't go to the bus line.
I mean, there's a tendency for us to want to resist it, but hey, you know what? If we do what is right,
that's true, though.
Simple things, right? There's a book by Alex Lacson, which I love, The 12 Little Things Every Filipino Can Do. And it basically talks about how we can make a difference. And we keep thinking, it's up to these guys. But really, hey, do I put my trash in the right place? Am I a litter bug? All of these things that build up to help make the Philippines better is really up to us and the small gestures of obedience. So, all of that to say, that's my long answer to
that's
your
how you start a 9-month-old off.
That's how we prep any of our young kids. It's all about the character. When the character bed is strong, the academics and all the other life skills become very well enforced.
I'm just gonna interject real quick before while Delamar picks her jaw off the floor, because I know that she has questions for you.
Sure.
But while she does that, have you always known that obedience was at the top of your priority list when it comes to raising children? Or because I really firmly believe that the more kids you have, the smarter you get as a person and as a parent. And that's why I feel like this is somehow because you have 6. Is it because you have 6? Okay, can you tell me more about it?
So how did I realize that obedience was so important?
Yeah.
I was not a very obedient boy, to be very frank with you.
That's what I was going to ask.
Right? And which is why I said, when I saw something different about Elijah, remember I talked about those big brown-eyed moments where I would say, Elijah, turn that off, and he would obey. I realized that, and I don't want to say that homeschooling is the secret to all parenting, but because of the amount of time we're able to have, the relationship we were able to form with him at a very young age, and the influence I was able to have on his life, that's what allowed the obedience to be unlocked well. You see, many parents will think, if you just force it on your kids, but you're not able to build a relationship, what will happen is they will be outwardly obeying, but at a certain point, when they've made up their own mind, or maybe when they're big enough, or maybe when the influence of others is stronger, they will say, no. Why will I listen to you? Because it's very outward. There is no relationship that's cemented. So that's, for me, what's made me realize how not only is obedience so important, but the way in which it is to be infused is to a strong relationship. So when I saw that was happening with our experiment in Elijah, I said, hey, this obedience thing is working. Look at how responsive he is. It became something that I realized I need to be able to keep doing across all my kids. And in those stories I mentioned, like him stopping before the car, has made us realize it has paid in so many dividends, if you will.
Isn't it funny how being mindful can make a whole lot of a difference? Because some dads, they won't notice that on, when their wife is homeschooling their child, they won't pay close attention to, hey, this might work. Some people will just go with the flow, but it's very important to be mindful. And, we've been doing the show for the past 5 seasons. The first 3 episodes of this season, that was always like the main takeaway. Is if, you're talking about how to be a career woman while you're parenting your babies at home, you have to be mindful. Whether it is, you're trying to wean your baby, breastfeeding wise, you also have to be mindful, and you can't pass on like negative emotions in the process. Otherwise, it'll make things difficult for you. So here we are again.
Speaking of being mindful, I think a large part of being mindful is also making sure you get the right information. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So how did I learn about obedience? I didn't just wake up one day and invent it, right? Someone had to tell me, hey, you need to instill obedience in your children. And that's why I was able to say, okay, while we're trying this out with Elijah, let's see if this obedience thing works, because I was not disciplined in that way. I did not grow up
Yeah,
with that mindset.
yeah. Yeah.
So that I think is important. If you're able to continue to learn the things you need to be able to do, and you're mindful of doing them, I think that helps instill that and what you want to be able to happen, like obedience.
It's 10:15. If you're just tuned in, we have Edric Mendoza. His son Elijah's here. He's 16. He's the eldest of the brood. Delamar is in Utah.
Utah, that's where she's at. Wow.
Yes, hi everybody.
So it's what, 10 a.m. there? Is it a 12-hour difference?
I think it's like 7.
No, we're 14
p.m.
hours behind.
15.
14
hours behind.
14 hours.
14 hours behind. Can remember? I don't know. Can our guest hear me?
Can you hear her?
Vaguely. Yes.
Vaguely.
And faintly. It's faint. Yeah,
It's faint. Okay. Del, what did you wanna say?
Oh, because we were talking about obedience and a very Christian term. Already from the onset, when he said obedience, and the supplemental verses that he was already quoting, I knew that there was a strong Christian belief there. And so you were talking about obedience and mindfulness. Yeah. And so I think and you were talking about mindfulness, I think what mindfulness does in our lives and the relationships around us is to keep us connected. So what happens is we're not just telling our children to do something because you need to do it because I told you, I'm your parent. Connection builds that relationship that he was talking about, which is you know each other. He knows you, you know him. And that makes a child more attentive to the parent. Because our kids will just mirror what we do. So if we ignore them, like we may dress them for school, put food on the table, but if we're not really interested in who they are and who they are becoming, parang they will just reflect that back on us when, like you said, when they're a lot older and have the power to say no.
Totally.
They will start saying no.
Yes.
But if they are connected and know they are seen and their parents know them and their strengths, they're more willing to listen and to follow, and to follow the leader, which are the parents, diba?
Yeah. Well said. And I think the reason why I highlighted the idea of relationship, Delamar, is because if our children know we love them, then their hearts will be turned towards us, and they will realize that the only reason why we insist on these things that they will obey in is not because, it's for mom and dad. It's because we want what is best for them. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that relationship helps them realize that, oh yeah, mom and dad are in it for our good. And Elijah, maybe you want to echo that so that they realize it's not just daddy talking. Is that how
of course. What's that quote? When did your child first fall in love with you?
That's right. Dr. Gordon Neufeld.
I think your headphones are okay, guys.
One of the foremost child development psychologists out of Canada. We were at a conference, and he said that line that Elijah's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So I can clearly see that my parents love me. That's not just what they say. It's true in how they live. I think one way they do that is showing that they really like us. They're genuinely interested in what we do. So aside from just saying, I love you, my dad will play outside with us. He'll do sports with us. He'll play board games with us. He'll spend intentional time with us.
Intentional time.
Right.
For me, that's my love language. I appreciate time. So when dad chooses to spend quality time with me, even just to talk with me or sit together with me and reflect, it means a lot to me, and I can see that he really does care about me and he does love me.
Good job, son.
Nice that you know your love language.
It's working.
Like taking you here, right?
Go ahead, Del.
Yeah, because I remember when we had Deanna Murphy, and Deanna Murphy was talking about connection. And when people in their families, that's why when we say family is the basic unit of society, and that's where most parents are now. Parang they want to build the character of their children. It's not just about saving time, money or time. It's about really being involved in the development of our children until such time that they can handle their own lives.
Yeah.
And it's echoed all around. We hear that from all our guests, Some people talk about quality time. Some people talk about connection. But they're all part and parcel of the same thing we're talking about. And Elijah, I could feel his love for his parents. I'm all the way in Utah.
Yeah.
And I feel every ounce in his body loves his parents and his family, and he will protect it. And it's quite a thing to devote yourself to, your family. Diba, no?
Totally.
It's something.
So can we do the economic side of homeschooling? So we know the logic behind it.
Sure.
But when it comes to homeschooling, because people sometimes are misled into thinking that it's totally free.
Yeah.
But in terms of paying for homeschooling, what kind of range are we talking about here?
Sure. So let's talk Philippine context. In the Philippines, I mean, to your point, Delamar, the mindset, and the mindset I like to help remind parents of, is homeschooling is a lot like building your own school system. Right? So if in the disruptive world, people are able to now go and say, well, I want to build my own home, so they go to
DIY.
Home Depot, exactly, or DIY. Or if I want to set up my own office, I go to an Office Depot. Homeschooling is kind of like build your own school, if you will, very loosely. So the costs and the economics behind that depend now on what kind of school you want for your child. So in the Philippine space right now, you can literally just put together some books, find some classes, maybe get some trainings, and the cost of all those things would be what you would spend for. And if you're resourceful enough, you find free PDFs, borrow old books from friends, you probably will spend close to nothing on materials if you go in that route. And in the Philippine context, those type of homeschoolers who just piece those things together and aren't really under any governed organization are loosely called independent homeschoolers. Or unschoolers, if you will.
Unschoolers.
Right. That's right.
Okay.
Now, those who choose to get themselves under some umbrella or some organization that is regulated by the government, so in layman's terms, that would be accreditation, right? You would not have to pay tuition, because the groups that are accredited by the government are schools who have brick and mortar facilities and are regulated by the Department of Education. So they would have an equivalent homeschooling tuition fee, and that tuition is what now parents who choose that system will pay on top of the books and the classes and other trainings they might want to undertake. So I'm going to put some hard numbers on the table in the Philippines, right? So loosely, if you go under a accredited school that offers homeschooling, you would probably pay anywhere from 15 to 35,000 pesos for a tuition for a year for a child. Some groups will offer family fees, which basically means even if you have 5, 6, 7 kids, it's the same tuition fee. Because in a homeschooling scenario, what these groups will do is they will equip the parents, not the kid, because the parents do the teaching of the kid. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anywhere from 15 to 35, and then you can spend anywhere from 2,000 to 10,000 pesos worth of books, depending on what you want. So you add that onto the tuition, and then the rest is now really up to you. Do you want to attend trainings? Do you want to have your kids enroll in classes in various places? Did you want to go to a event like these conferences that you might have been hearing about in the Philippines, where you can learn more? That's now all up to you. So literally, you build your own school system based on what makes sense. So net, Delamar, a parent can spend anywhere from maybe, I would say conservatively, 17,000 to about 50 would probably be the safe range for a student in a year that homeschools. So that's what it's looking like so far in the Philippines in terms of economics.
Okay, because we had a guest from a couple of seasons ago, and one of the conferences that one of the things that they look forward to in the conferences is choosing the, what do you call them, modules or
curriculum?
Yeah, the curriculum. So they were saying that sometimes you could get it, like you said, absolutely free. If you have somebody who has it already, you can just use it on your kid, share it, there. So, and then when you're talking about this conservative estimate, if you were to go all out, would it be comparable to sending your child to, let's say, Ateneo or La Salle as well?
So I'll speak to that practically and then philosophically. Okay? So philosophically, right? So my wife's mom, Diana Tanchi, if you look at the history of homeschool in the Philippines, is probably one of the pioneers.
Oh, wow.
And when her husband, so my father-in-law now, Peter Tanchi, when I asked him what he thought about the economics, he's also a businessman. He said, you know what, Edric, if you think about it philosophically, it is the most expensive education in the world because you give your whole life to it.
Wow.
So that's why I want to say philosophically. But practically, Delamar, does it compare to a regular school? For sure, no. If you go all out, when you say all out, that is very relative. So we know of some very wealthy families who, for security reasons, they choose to homeschool, so I will not mention their names. And they have tutors of all sorts. And they travel quite extensively. They have exchange programs for the children. They start up their own small businesses. So all the money that you put behind that can obviously way surpass a Ateneo tuition of what, 150 to 175.
I guess you can spend as much as you want.
Exactly.
If
There
you
you
really
go.
want
Yeah.
It just
So
depends
that's
on
my
the kind of
side.
education that you have.
That's why I was showing a typical
okay.
amount. So a typical amount in a homeschooling family would probably be anywhere from 30 to 50,000 pesos a year. So an Ateneo would be about 175, depending on what level, I would think. So from an economic standpoint, I'll put on my financial planner hat. There is much to be saved in homeschooling, mainly because you have control. In a school, you have to pay that flat rate, whatever, and you can't pick and choose and
because
say,
you're paying for all the facilities.
you're paying for all
Whether
the.
you
So you
like it
can't
or
say,
not.
for example, hey, my son isn't really into basketball or football or swimming, which is the largest infrastructure in your school. Can I get a discount because they're not really going to use that? You can't really do that, unfortunately. And this is, I want to be very clear and honest in saying this is by no means saying that homeschooling is better than the school systems. I'm a big believer in you need to ask yourself, what are the learning goals of your child? And if homeschooling best addresses that, then go for it. But if it is best addressed in the school, for example, people have asked us, well, I don't really have time to be able to engage my child, to teach them, to be able to impart these character things because I'm just busy. Both parents are working or they're in a season of their life where they're hustling and they're building their own practices.
Identity,
My honest opinion is, hey, send them to school because you're gonna.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I think the technology enforces that too, right? Seriously, send them to school because you're not gonna be able to help them achieve the learning goals that they deserve. Does that make sense?
Okay, that makes sense.
But on a money standpoint, I need to be fair in saying, hey, that's how I would frame it. You have 170,000 pesos that you would put in school A. Can you do much more with that as a parent? My honest answer is, of course. There's so much more you can do if, again, homeschooling hits the learning goals and the lifestyle that you think makes sense for your family. Does that answer your question, Delamar?
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So, what was I going to say? What's the name of your wife?
She has a beautiful name. It's how I feel when I think about her. Joy. That's her name. Joy.
So, I think I might have the one I was talking about a conversation I had. Is your mother-in-law an American woman?
Yes. So maybe that was them.
Yeah, that was her. That was her.
Joy. Yes.
Yeah, Joy. And so your mother-in-law actually tried to talk me into homeschooling.
That was the woman you were talking
Yeah,
about?
and she told
no
me
surprise,
about
Delamar. No surprise.
yeah.
Like mother, like daughter. No surprise.
She's a wonderful lady, a great energy about her, and she was just, I could see that she just wanted to show me another way in case I was interested.
Yeah.
And then she told me about her daughter, and she told me about your wife's website.
No way. Small
Yes,
world.
hey.
We shouldn't be surprised anymore. It really is a small
Wow.
world. Yeah. So,
Yes.
did it help you in your attempt to think about what education for your children?
So my approach with my children is kind of a combination, because here in the U.S., of course, schooling is free.
Yeah, public schooling.
Public schooling is free. So me and my husband want them to go to school. But me and my husband also, we don't do like a curriculum, but there's a lot of like supplemental learning, because the approach that me and my husband are taking is that we want to know their strengths so we can steer them into their strengths more as they grow.
Awesome. Yeah, those are the learning goals, right? So this is their strength.
Yeah.
This is how we will help lead them towards that direction. That's awesome. Good for you guys.
So all your kids are being homeschooled except for the baby, right?
Oh no,
Yes.
she's in it.
Yeah.
She's in it.
In the technical
So
sense,
that-
we defined earlier, right? Yes, the 5.
Right. So does that mean what you've used in with Elijah when it comes to the curriculum? Do you follow all for all of your children his curriculum?
Well, this is what my mom did with me. I'm kind of like her lab rat. She experiments with all the new curriculum on me, and then she filters that to the younger ones. The ones that she likes, she can keep. Of course, there are textbooks that you have to write in. Those ones we can't really reuse.
Yeah.
But we do have science textbooks that are like readable, and we've reused those over the years. Yeah, and those have proved very, very useful.
Can I just tell you something that most parents will not admit, but it's true? Most firstborns are experiments.
Thanks for putting it out there, Delamar. That's
Agree.
the truth.
I believe that.
I agree.
Whether it's direct or indirect, right? I mean, it just happens. I was a firstborn, I know.
We are all first.
We are
We're
all
all firstborns.
Yes.
We're all firstborns. You're right. This is a firstborn room right
That's
here.
right.
We're all the lab rats.
Firstborns.
Welcome, fellow #lab rats.
That's right.
Oh, sorry, I'm out of the group.
Okay.
I'm a middle child, you know.
Middle child. Yeah, the middle child is in the closet at the moment. So
In the Utah closet
in
somewhere.
the Utah closet. No, yeah. But yeah, no, all firstborns, all experiments.
So can I ask Edric one more question? Is that okay, Ricky?
Go
Andy?
ahead, go.
So one of the things, like 10 years ago when people would hear about homeschooling, it didn't have a really good reputation at the time. And one of the things that most people didn't like about it, and we asked some of our guests in previous seasons, was what about the peer-to-peer socialization? What's your take on that and homeschooling?
Awesome. Yeah, so totally agree with you. 10 years ago, the climate was a little different. There are a lot more homeschoolers in the Philippines, and a lot of the negative stereotypes, which even I had when I had that conversation with my wife about our own lab rat, Elijah. They have been dispelled, but they still exist. So to answer your question, Delamar, in the world today, there are only 2 big questions, and I think still 2 big challenges when it comes to the negative stereotypes of homeschooling. We call them the big A, or academics, and then the big S, socialization, which is your question, the peer-to-peer, right? So the question that many parents, whether they're hearing about it or they're not parents and they hear about homeschooling, they will say, well, aren't you gambling the child's future academically? Because mom and dad don't necessarily have all the training that the school faculty, etc. would have. I can answer that separately, but let's answer the big S, socialization, which is part of your question, right? In the last 10 years, part of the stereotype of, homeschoolers won't really be able to learn to interact with others, to develop skills in socialization and socializing. So I'm going to ask Elijah. He's smiling when he first heard you saying that because, we get this literally a lot, and I've answered it. We've written a book that addresses this also, my wife and I. So, Elijah, speak to the socialization part and I'll jump in.
This is literally the first or second question I get every single time I'm with someone and they first learn about homeschooling from me.
What do they say? What do they ask
Aren't
exactly?
you lonely at home?
Aren't you
have no
lonely at
friends?
Okay.
So, I think the assumption is you have no friends, you're stuck under a rock.
Yeah.
And for some people, that can be true. But for me, I guess what helped is there's so many other places outside of the home where I can meet people. With all the extra time I have, because homeschooling gives me a lot of flexibility to go around. I can meet people. In my classes, I used to do violin. I would meet people there. And I think that's also where the benefit of having an umbrella provider comes in. You're with a community of other people. So I'm currently under Homeschool Global, and we have a community there called High Unite for all the high schoolers.
Okay.
And it's not a small community. It's got over like 1,000 high schoolers all across the world. And we put up events that high schoolers can join that are homeschooled.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's where I get my socialization. And I think the benefit, if you will, that homeschooling brings to socialization is that it's also customized in a way. Because when you're in a school and you have a classroom, you're stuck with those friends. You can't really make a choice about them. But when you're homeschooled, you can choose friends that are aligned with your values.
Yeah.
And you can choose company that your parents will agree with, and company that will build you up and help you develop yourself more.
Right, fantastic. Elijah's amazing. I'm listening to him. I'm like, I hope my wife's hearing this whole thing, right? We did not rehearse any of this for the record. I'm just listening. I'm like, wow, this is not my son.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's better than me. So, Delamar, I want to also address that with a mindset, right? A large part of the mindset we like to give parents when it comes to socialization is asking a hard question. And the hard question is, when you think about peer-to-peer relationships or the socialization at the formative years, what is our goal? What are we really wanting them to achieve in that whole interaction? And when parents honestly answer that, the common answer is we want to prepare them for the real world, real world interaction. Not everyone's going to be nice to you. You know, you're going to have to learn to deal with diversity, which is a very big word in the world today because of globalization, etc. So if that is the goal, the logical question which was posed to me when I first asked the same question, Delamar, was this: how do I prepare my children for that real world interaction? What's the best way? And so this gentleman, his name is Bob Tebow, when he sat me down, he said, Edric, I want to ask you some hard questions. So let's say there's only two options for our children to develop peer-to-peer relationships. One is in the school system, and then one is outside of it, right? So that would be homeschool, where you could be stuck under a rock or whatever. So in those two environments, let's now ask, what does the real world interaction look like? And here are the questions we can ask ourselves. Real world. So you guys are all working, we're all working. Are we surrounded with people who are the same age?
Yeah.
No. In the real world, okay? Real world, so you're not the same age here. The crew, not the same age.
No.
Are you surrounded with people who are the same gender? No. Same religion? No. Same social class? No. So age, gender, religion, social class. In the real world, it's very diverse, so no.
Yeah.
But in those two environments, in a conventional school system, as Elijah was pointing out, with the peers you have there, are they the same age? Are they the same gender? In the Philippines, private schools, most likely, yes. Are they the same religion? Same thing. Are they the same social class? Most likely, yes. So, how is it that we think that by interacting with those type of peers that they're prepared for the real world? It was a very hard question that was asked of me. So when that gentleman, Bob, asked me that, I looked at him and I'm like, hey, Bob, I never saw that perspective. So the question we're really asking ourselves is, well, then how do we prepare them for that real world interaction? And this is where the word that Elijah used is the cut-across answer to both the big A and the big S, Delamar. The word customize. The whole idea of you build it yourself because you will know what is best for your child. So in the education space, which I have a large exposure to, the dream of many educators is tailor-fit education because each learner is unique. You have two kids, they're different. We have 5 kids, they have the same mom and dad, the same environment, and yet they're all different. So we have to address the learning that is literally tailor-fit to each of them. One guy might like technology, we have to tailor-fit technology. One guy might like botany and science, we do that for that child. So in the socialization space, we also want to be able to customize. For example, so part of what you guys were saying earlier is how I was for a season the anchor of this show on ANC. On the money. It was all about personal finance. So my wife has no interest in money matters, to be very honest, and she still echo this right now. So when I first got on the show, Elijah was only 9 years old, 8 or 9, and I told my wife, hey babe, so I learned about the stocks and all these things, and she's looking at me like, that's nice, honey.
That's nice.
But she's not really interested, right? But my son jumps in and he's like, hey, that's awesome. I want to learn about the stock market. Now let me just fast forward the whole thing. So my 9-year-old boy, his fascination in money and stock market basically brought him to a point where as I was speaking and talking and coaching people about money in various circles, I would bring him with me, and in front of like 100, 300, 1,000 people, when he would speak, he would put up his paper as a 9-year-old boy, big brown eyes, and say, "Hi, my name is Elijah, and I'm homeschooled." And everyone's like, and he's like, "And I'm here today because this is my first real job."
Oh, wow.
Every time I go with my dad, he pays me a fee. so
That's
wow.
real socialization.
So I share that because he interacts with people who are messengers, guys that welcome us in, managers, executive CEOs, people who I sit at a table with, and that interaction is no longer just people his age, but for us and our family is the real world interaction that we feel makes sense.
Yeah.
And we're able to do that because we are homeschooling. So that long answer to your question on peer-to-peer is how I love framing it, Delamar. We really want to ask the question, how are we best preparing our children for the real world interaction?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, because a lot of people who say socialization, it's not as simple as like, oh, your kids won't have friends.
Yeah.
Because that's impossible. Even if you are homeschooling, you have neighbors and there are kids around you.
And
so
your
when
parents.
they talk about socializing children, it's not just that. So my question pertains more to the things that go on between children.
Okay.
For example, you see the children in a playground having to share and take turns. It's different when they are, let's say, in the playground without the parents, because now they are supposed to get along with each other and exercise big terms like fairness, a sense of fair play, taking turns, all that, but also the competition between students. Now, I'm echoing this from the side of people who have reservations to homeschooling, but want to try it out, but they're kind of scared. Okay, let's just point of clarification.
Sure.
The education system right now is post World War II.
Yeah.
And so we are training children to go into the workforce and be part of the corporations, find jobs. So obviously, marami ng different, the world is a different place. And that's why education systems around the world, in Europe specifically, in Scandinavia, have changed.
Yeah.
But when I asked the question of socialization, part of it that I was voicing out for our listeners who might have reservations is just that, kasi minsan pag nasa classroom ka, you really understand that there is politics and there is learning that goes beyond the curriculum in a school.
Clear.
There is getting along with bullies, getting along with your place in the ranking, how to pursue your dreams of being yung mga ganon. It's not just so much that your kids don't have friends.
Very good.
And so how would you address that?
Sure. So I'll frame that by using the word character, right? I think what I'm hearing from you is, in those interactions, how are we able to foster character? Not just friendships, but character. Like you said, being able to chase dreams, to persevere, to show grit, right? To be able to share, to be able to say, wait, I gotta wait for my turn because it's not all about me, right? Those are all character traits. So I think if I was to frame your question, it is, how do you help instill character in the children in a homeschooling environment? And is that comparable to, let's say, in a school environment? Am I framing it correctly?
Yeah. More of the learning that happens between the kids.
Yeah, interaction.
That we can't do. You know how it is in a group. Parang in a group of kids without the parents. You will see that they will interact in a specific way that represents their family's values, right?
Right.
But all the kids, for that certain amount of time, will now have to get along with each other, and so there's an adjusting that happens between kids.
Yeah.
That is not that part is what I was asking. Oh, part of my question actually.
Okay.
So like the social hierarchy and peer-to-peer interaction that's independent of the parents. Is that what you're saying?
Just how, actually, this is, I think, maybe your parents can also, your dad can also answer. Like, for example, kasi diba, in a class, maybe Edric can answer this first.
Go for
like
it.
in a classroom, there are 30 people, and of course there will be kids who are not fair. There will be kids who are not good. There are kids who are good. There are kids who are ahead of the pack, kids in the middle. So there's a lot of learning that happens. And so when we talk about socialization, it's not just about the friendships, but that kind of setting. I guess when you were saying earlier that to prepare them for outside interaction, kasi ganun ang nangyayari sa offices. We are all competing with each other for that raise, for that position, in as much as we can.
Good
and
question.
so that's the part that I wanted some clarification.
Fantastic. So I think in the scenario you painted, you're basically saying, how do you help children remain competitive? If they are not necessarily around peers who they can now measure themselves against and say, oh, am I better than this person? Am I not? And if I'm not, what do I do to get better? Right? So if that is the question, I think the best way to frame the answer to that is, are these students internally motivated or externally motivated? So I grew up in exactly the environment you mentioned. So I come from a blue school and I was very competitive. I became the captain of my team. I became president of my class, honor student, because I would measure myself against peers, right? And I think that, well, quite frankly, did well for me, maybe, for the most part, and can do well for many students. But what happens when you fail? And what happens when there's no one to benchmark yourself against? What I've observed and what the professors from my same school observed about homeschoolers when they were outstanding in the same ways is they realized that they are internally motivated. I am going to push myself, not because I'm measuring myself against anybody else, but because I know my capacity is greater. And until I hit that, I'm going to keep going. And once I hit that, and if I still don't stack up to the others around me, I'm going to be happy and not going to beat myself up, because in the words we like to use with our kids, it is, have you done your best for Jesus, right? So that's how I would frame it, Delamar. I think that is a very important trait that students and children and even us need to be able to develop, the idea of pushing ourselves towards excellence. The question I would have around that is, how is that achieved? Is it externally motivated or is it internally motivated? And I think many people and even psychologists will agree, because that professor I talked about was a psychology professor back in that school that I came from. She said, you obviously want a person to be internally motivated. I will do well regardless of whether mom and dad are watching me, whether my peers are doing better than me or not. I'm going to keep pushing because I know I can go farther. This is my capacity. That's internal motivation. So the question is, how do you develop internal motivation? Whether you're in a school system surrounded by peers or in a homeschooling scenario where you can have various type of peers across ages, the key that I've seen in developing internal motivation, and this is just my view, is good parenting. What we talked about very early on, of a healthy relationship, so that from that healthy relationship you can give the child a healthy sense of self-identity and self-esteem. And from that point they will say, okay, you know what, I know I'm secure in the love of my parents, so I'm going to keep pushing myself towards what I feel God has impacted.
They can build a vision because they know their identity. They can start creating a vision that they have for themselves, the purpose that they want, and they can drive toward that goal regardless of whether peers are not doing that.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes. Now, of course, it's important to check yourself, right? Because they can be disillusioned and saying, well, I'm doing so well. So that's where you need to have some level of relationship with others to be able to check you and say, actually, there's still so much more you can do. Elijah, for example. So that's how I would frame the response and even the question that you had, Delamar. Did I capture that correctly?
Oh, yes. And so for some people right now who are on the fence, because the idea and the movement of homeschooling is growing every day. I know that some of my friends here in the U.S. have already done it 7 years ago.
Wow.
And part of their reason is a little bit different. So these are, here in America, because it's so diverse, right? It's when you go to a classroom, we're not just talking about diversity in terms of ethnicity. we're talking about religion, we're talking
Yes.
about culture, we're talking about language. And some of my friends, it was a reaction to just making sure that they can filter the world that their children will see while they are young. And so there was an idea that they wanted to make sure that they can show parang it kasi natatakot sila with what the kids sometimes might get from the outside world.
Yes.
That's part of their decision.
Yes.
Oo, kasi let's face it, when you put them in school, you know, sometimes they come home with words that you've never used in your home.
Yes,
And
yes, been there.
Diba?
We've dealt with a number of
What's your
families like that.
experience with that?
Exactly.
Huh?
Sorry, did you say something? What did you ask the question? Go ahead.
Yeah, and so for some of my friends, it was more of controlling. It's like filtering the world that children are exposed to, because they're a little, no, not a little bit scared, but a whole lot scared as to what comes into the minds of children by way of the education system. Would that have any part in your decision, or it was all from a different angle?
For sure, yes, for sure. So the same American lady you mentioned earlier, my mother-in-law, this is how she frames it when she was asked the same question about her kids. And this is something we also use now. It is the difference between incubation and isolation.
Wow.
So we like to incubate our children. And, in other words, give them the muscle to be able to say, okay, here are the right values, here are the right mindsets, so that when I now get a taste of the real world and all of the different influences, I can hold my ground and say, actually, I don't really want to do drugs, although you guys think that's cool, that's not my thing. Or I don't really want to sleep around because that's not my thing. Right? Because you've incubated them. The isolation is what we do not want to happen. And I think that's where all the negative stereotypes surrounding homeschooling can be and can honestly actually happen, especially in places like America, where they're very big on independence, individuality, versus Asia and the Philippines, where we're very communal, right? So, yes, for sure, that's part of the reason our family's been doing it. And my wife, like her mother, and if you heard earlier, that's why she would have homeschooled Elijah all the way through college. But I'm different. I feel like we've done our part, to be honest. I'm like, okay, I look at this young man and he's not a boy anymore. He's a man. And I feel like we've built in good anchors. So we've incubated him and given him what we feel is our best in terms of, hey, here are the right values, Elijah, and here's why you should believe it. Not just because mom and dad are telling you, but why it should make sense for you. And because I'm fairly confident he's there already, I actually think he can be now in environments like a school environment as he prepares for college, and we'll now see whether he's able to weather the various influences because we already incubated him well enough.
That's what you like to say, right, Dad?
Yes. Isolation is all about they should have no friends. Nobody at all. And we know people like that. We don't want any other person. They're not going to open their TVs. They're not going to open their gadgets because they don't want any other outside influence on their children. For me, that is way extreme, and that's not what we're talking about. It's all about, for us, incubation. Let them meet other people, but make sure you are the primary influence and you're helping form these strong convictions in them that are right, so that they can, on their own, hold their ground and say, you know what? No, I don't think I'm going to do that. And you want to speak to that,
The way
Elijah?
you used to word that to me is protect versus prepare, right?
Okay.
So,
Can you explain that?
yeah, so when you would talk to me about these things that I will experience in the real world, like
Pornography
pornography and all these competing influences, I think what homeschooling does, what it's done for me at least, is instead of shoving me out there with all the different competing voices trying to gain control, it's able to pull me away for a little bit to prepare me and to have one conviction that I can hold on to, so that when I will, of course, eventually be put into that world, I will,
Which you're now kind of getting
Yeah.
into also.
I'll be able to hold my ground. like what Dad said.
Well said. Yeah. So the preparing is the more important thing than protecting, because as parents we cannot fully protect our kids from all the influences we don't want them to be exposed to. Right? There's just no way. We'll do our best, but there's just no way. So preparing them to be able to say, actually, Dad, I saw this magazine or I stumbled across this website, and I don't think it's going to lead to something that I want to do that is right. So they develop the muscle or the conviction to say no, and that takes time. So we use the early years, the formative years, to help strengthen that, so that when they're older, like my son, 16 now, and he's 17, then he can be able to say, no, I don't think I'm going to look into these things because it's not going to be good for me. Am I correct, Elijah? Is that what you were saying? Yeah.
Edric, I think you hit the nail on the head, because isolation is when people do that behind homeschooling, that's reasoning behind homeschooling, it's driven out of fear.
Exactly.
That's
well
what
said.
you do out of fear. But yours is different. Yours is intention. It's an intention. It's part of your intentional parenting. So the schooling of your child is also intentional, and you are the one who guides them through it. I just want to tell Elijah something, because as you father and son were both talking, I was never homeschooled. You know, I went to a traditional school and then small Christian school in Nagdahan, and then I went to UP. And even if I were in a traditional school, I was pretty much sheltered, because when I entered UP, there was just so many things.
Culture shock, no, the best.
One of the great debates of my life in college was creationism versus evolution.
Oh my.
And a lot of people were just, they were just doing the test to pass the course. But for me, because I am a pastor's daughter, it shook me to my core. It shook me to my core.
Right.
Like, I could take the exam and probably get a passing grade, but it made me question everything that I had learned. And at some point, whether you are homeschooled or not, when you're out there in the world as an adult, you will have to do that anyways.
Well said.
Because now the worldview that your parents have imparted to you, you will now shape it into the worldview that makes sense to you. Because remember, they're different people. They have different experiences. So, Elijah, brace yourself.
I am experiencing some of that
I can
now.
see your strength in you.
Yeah.
Going into college and they're telling me about, I'm like, whoa. I think, to be honest, there is always going to be some culture shock as you prepare.
That's true.
But yeah, the role
I
of the
feel
parents.
that's like a life lesson. That's something that you have to go through.
Yeah.
Like one instance or another, you're
going
gonna
to.
get thrust into a room that you're not familiar with, and that's always the beauty of, again, experiments. We're gonna see if this whole experiment that you've been working on with your wife for 16 years, he's sitting here in the same room. We're gonna see if that pans out as well. But I feel like.
And I think part of the comfort that I have as an observer of this is it's not a blind experiment, if you will.
Yeah.
So I mentioned my wife was homeschooled.
Yeah.
And her siblings. And I look at her and I'm like, okay, nobody's a perfect person by no means. But when I look at her and her siblings, I'm like, they turned out pretty well. I think they were able to weather the storms of in Elijah's world, the assaulting influences all over in various scenarios. So that gives me a little bit of comfort that there is, this isn't just a blind experiment we're doing. And there's so many other people who have also chosen homeschooling here and in the U.S., as Delamar is saying. I've had the privilege of engaging literally people from around the world because of my various homeschooling involvements. And I've seen them across cultures, across religions. I think the cry of parents is the same. For example, we were with a bunch of Muslim families 2 weeks ago talking about homeschooling in our book, and the same undercurrent is present. They want what is best for their kids, and to be able to help give them the word I use is anchors, so that they can make the right decisions when now faced with the various influences. Because as it stands, they're being pulled and tugged in so many different directions, and some are making some awful choices at very early ages, and that's what's causing them to rethink, well, is this the best environment for my children to be in? Or should I now homeschool and sort of give them a little bit of the, as Elijah said, pull back a little to reset, develop those convictions, and then bring them back out?
Yeah.
Because it is, it is a challenge for parents today, right?
Yeah, and you know, people are always saying, you know, we went to traditional school, we turned out fine. You know, you should put them in there if you want them to adjust quickly. But again, 2019, the world we live in now, it's not the same as it was before. If we're just talking about technology, that is like, I feel like that's a whole episode in itself, and we could go on and on about how it's
game changer.
It is a game changer. Thank you, Elijah. So, I think again, you know, if you're listening, we have Edric Mendoza, his son Elijah is here as well. Homeschooling is intentional parenting. But if you think that, you know, if you're a career woman, you're a parent who needs to work, then, and if you can't intentionally teach your child that way, then you should totally send him to a traditional school, to a teacher who's trained and licensed to do that. Yeah. Right? What a topic.
No, but you know what you were saying, like, because my sisters were homeschooled and now they're in college.
Yes.
And you were talking that incubation period, because I'm starting to see the change that I like, because I was in a traditional school all the way, so I saw like the difference that we had. So when it comes to them being 19, 18, and 20, the maturity level was, and like the ability to say no to certain things, which I couldn't do before because I was very immature compared to who they are now. So I could really I could see the difference. And
good. I'm glad you're validating it, because I was like, maybe the theory is wrong, or so you saw the difference. You saw them able to hold on and say, no, I don't think I want these choices.
They're more the groundwork is there.
Yeah, the groundwork, the convictions are there. Yeah, the foundation, like the anchors are there as well. So, yeah. So what?
I love
homeschool?
Parang I want to be homeschooled first, so that I know what to do.
So hey, on that note, seriously, what many parents who have gone down the road of homeschooling will say is one of the biggest refreshing learnings they have is that homeschooling homeschools me.
Oh, yeah.
It's exactly to your point. I mean, there's so much that happens to you as the mom and the dad that you did not expect, because you're having to learn with them and learn through the whole experience yourself, right?
And this is why I'm saying, I feel like if you have more kids, you just become smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter. So that's times 6 for you, Edric. It's 11:01. Guys, thank you so much for being here. That was a whole hour.
Yeah.
That was fun.
That was awesome.
I know. A lot of people are saying more, like they want more of this topic. So I know that, Edric, you have a lot of talks. Do you want to plug where they can catch you online?
Sure, yeah. So there's 2 places where you can catch me as far as, well, actually 3 as homeschooling is concerned, right?
Okay.
One is through Happy. It's a national organization that is behind many of the conferences, and it's endorsing both these upcoming conferences on homeschooling. One is tomorrow.
That's
September
right.
7th. And then there's another one on October 5th. Same venues, SM Aura. The one tomorrow is by a group of friends whom we know. And I think one of them was supposed to be here. Are they coming on later, San?
Yeah, they're outside.
Yeah, so San will talk about that. The other group on October 5th is Homeschool Global, and that's what Elijah's connected to. And that's another place you can catch me. I do a bunch of trainings and talks on homeschooling through HG across their different hubs. I'm actually going to one at 1 o'clock. I'm looking for a clock here.
It's right
there.
At Ayala 30th Mall, there is a learning hub there. So you can go there, and you can also check out both websites, happy.ph or homeschoolglobal.com. The third place to catch me is in my own personal space. My wife and I have been privileged to write a book because people have kept asking us questions. And someone in the writing space said, a book extends your reach, so you don't always have to be there. So we wrote a book and we launched it, and we've been going around this year. It's called Why You Should Homeschool, and it should be available in most major bookstores or on the ABS-CBN publishing site, who's the publisher behind it. So you can catch me talking about that, or my wife, through our handles. So I'm on Instagram, Edric Mendoza 1 is how you could catch me. So there, if you have more questions, I'd love to answer as much as I can. Of course, my wife is the 360 expert because she homeschools the kids.
We should get
I'm
her on
the
next
framework
time.
guy. Yeah, she was supposed to go, as I mentioned,
I
but
know.
she's preparing for a big trip and she's homeschooling, and that is her priority right now. So, yeah, you could catch her handles. Teach with Joy is her blog. You can catch her there. So.
Galing.
Yeah.
Elijah,
So
you're
thanks
going
for having
to.
us again,
No,
Ricky.
thank
And
you.
This was fun.
Thank you guys for
Speaking
being here.
Things that are close to our heart, and I'm glad that Elijah you joined me. Good job, buddy.
Yeah.
I
You
know.
answered well. A
See-
son that I do not deserve.
Delamar is asking which university you're planning to go to.
That's a good
Oh,
question.
that
that
is-
is the hot topic of the
And
Mendoza
what
household.
Yes,
Which
you-
I was
what
telling you guys about, right? I said I think you should go to school already. That's our discussion. Honestly, I think you should. But Elijah, what are your? You speak honestly.
What are
and
your
then maybe we can-
plans?
and wrap
Yeah.
up.
I think that's the most difficult question I've been trying to avoid on my
Aw.
whole homeschooling journey until this point where I can't avoid it anymore. And at this point, of the options I've gone through, I think I might choose as a local university, maybe Ateneo, because that's where my dad went. It's familiar. And then for a course, I really want to pursue nanotechnology, maybe nanomedicine,
Wow.
because it's what I'm interested in. It's technology and science, chemistry, math.
Yeah.
It all comes together,
Wow.
and I think I can use it to make a big impact in the world. So
That's great.
for that, I would probably go to an international university.
Nano. Do they have that in Ateneo?
No.
No.
Not
And
yet.
that's why you're thinking of going international. Dude, that's
Yeah, we're thinking of maybe a nearby Southeast Asian country where we have relatives. So yeah, so we're seeing. We got 2 more years before he goes off to college.
Who knows? I might not even go to college.
This is live, Elijah. This is live on air. There are people watching this. So I hope your
If
mom is
I'm-
not listening.
If I'm able to
When you
start
get
a
home, it's
business,
like,
who
what
knows?
did you say about college?
11:06. Parang in the whole interview, they're not fine. You're harping about him, glowing at all his responses.
I'm still glowing.
So
I'm still glowing.
I might not even go to college. I love it.
Yeah.
Perfect way to end it. Again, Edric, Elijah, thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
very
being
much.
here.
Thanks,
And
guys.
Ricky, appreciate
No.
having us, right?
It's 11:16. Welcome back to the Mother Show here on Magic 89.9. My name is Ricky.
I'm Andy. Whoa.
And this is Delamar all the way from Utah.
Yes, she is. She's still with us. We just said goodbye to Edric and Elijah Mendoza. We wish that we could have them on. Like probably
I know.
can have the entire family.
That would be
back
really
for one
fun.
of the episodes.
Or maybe
right?
Joy, if you're listening.
Yeah,
Hi,
Joy. Oh my
Please
goodness.
join us on the show.
You must be so
Hey
proud of your
guys,
son.
while you're at it, invite the mom of Joy.
Yeah,
We could, yeah.
See, Mrs.
Yes.
Stanchi, diba? Oh, she would be.
Can I also greet a mother who is listening right now? Her name is Sharon Agoncillo Galang. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Sharon. Thank you for listening. You can shoot us a message in case you're tuned in from anywhere in the Philippines, anywhere in the world. It's at The Mother Show PH. Edric, before he left, he mentioned that there were a couple of conventions coming up. And the soonest one is actually tomorrow.
Is it homeschooling month? Is there a month for homeschooling? Because I feel like all the conventions are happening this month.
This month,
right?
no? Breastfeeding conventions, but also all of
Breastfeeding
the...
was last month,
August, yeah.
But I feel like September's becoming like a homeschooling
Is
month.
it?
I don't know.
No, because you know why?
Why?
I think it's because of the cutoff. Do you guys have that cutoff? The academic cutoff of...
I don't know.
Diba?
Let's ask them
Yeah,
later.
no, because okay, so Calix is born September 30, and
Okay.
he just missed like
Oh.
the cutoff for his school year.
Uh-huh.
So maybe that's why. I don't know. I'm inventing. It's 11:17. So there's a convention happening tomorrow. It's called No Place Like Home, the Philippine Homeschool Convention, and we're so blessed to have one of their speakers on the show with us today. Her name is Kay Ang. Hi, Kay.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to
Thank
the
you
show.
for having me today.
We're so glad that you can make it. Joining her is the co-founder of EFL, San Unson. Hi, San.
Good morning.
So San is with us today with Kay. Thank you so much for being here. There's a convention happening tomorrow. right?
That's right. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. at the SMX Convention Center
Yes.
in SMR.
Wow.
Okay, so when you say there's a homeschooling convention,
What happens?
what happens there?
What happens at conventions?
Basically, it's a gathering of homeschooling parents in different seasons of their journey. So there are some who are just starting out or just are still deciding. You were asking about the homeschooling month of sorts, but it's really because around this time, a lot of parents are already thinking about the next school year, especially for their younger kids. So we just felt, and traditionally for the past years, we've been doing it around this time of the year. So
Okay, so tell me about these past years. When did it start? Yung conventions that you're involved with?
there has been a lot of conferences under with Edric years ago, but the one that we started organizing started around 2013, and we've organized one yearly. So that's why we call it the Philippine Annual Philippine Homeschool Convention, and it has evolved now. We've partnered with different organizations, with Happy, etc., and now it has evolved into what is now the Philippine Homeschool Convention that we're having tomorrow. Yes.
And have the numbers grown exponentially over the years?
Yes, definitely, because homeschooling is really becoming popular these
It
days.
is growing.
Yes.
It's been growing.
There's been a growing interest in homeschooling. So a lot of people are checking it out, checking if it's a good fit for their families and their kids.
So there's a fit. There's a fit. Like Edric was saying kanina, diba? If you're busy, you send your child to an educator so that, you know.
And you said, diba, it's expensive because it takes a lot of your time.
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of your energy, a lot of...
I like how he phrased it. He phrased it so well kanina when he said...
He said it better than I did.
Yeah,
but
when Del was asking about the cost, diba?
Yeah,
The cost, he
yeah.
said, well, okay, philosophically...
There you go.
Philosophically, it's, it's a lot more work.
Yeah.
Because you have to be there, you have to be present, mindful, and you really have to have patience with all the challenges. But okay, so let's talk about your personal homeschooling journey. So, San, you have a 9-year-old.
Yes, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and she never went to school.
Okay.
So we just started out. My husband and I, even before I gave birth, already said that we didn't want her to go to a school early.
How come?
We just felt that we wanted her to have a childhood that's like ours. Lots of time for play. Yes, and we saw a lot of children at that time, very young children who were already burnt out by the time they got into grade 1.
Yeah.
So we wanted something different for our daughter.
Okay.
And then one thing led to another, and we never stopped homeschooling.
Yeah.
She's now in 4th grade.
Oh, nice. 9. She's 9.
Hey, Ricky,
Yeah.
can I ask a question?
Of course.
So, am I talking to Kay or Sam?
You can talk to either Kay or San. They're both...
Who was the one? Who was just? Sorry, I couldn't tell who was the one whose daughter is 9 years old in 4th
San.
grade and never went to school, traditional school.
San. This is San.
Is that Kay or Sam?
San.
Okay, Sam, have you read that article that said that kasi parang the trend prior to this homeschooling thing was everyone was making their kids read before grade 1.
Yeah.
And and child psychologists were saying exactly what your husband and you were thinking, and even me and Tyler, me and my husband, we were like, why is everybody pushing kids to be parang they're not ready for that kind of learning. The kind of learning they need at this age is different.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So I talk about that also when we speak about preschool, homeschool. No? And I read something about parental expectations and the gap between parental expectations and developmental realities. So a lot of parents really are somehow competitive. They want their children to have an advantage all the time. Competitive advantage. And in fact, I once chatted with a mom whose kids were a year younger than my daughter, and they were learning math. They were learning the same math topics, and I was like, why? Because now for grade 1, they learn the math for grade 2.
What?
So that they're ready for grade 2 or something.
What school is that? I must avoid.
I don't see that.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we have to be conscious also about what we expect our children to accomplish versus what they are really supposed to be accomplishing and doing
At that age.
Yeah, at the particular age.
Wow. That's funny because there's some schools, like the reason why you send them to school is that so they can learn, but not over learn. Is that what you guys are making bantay also? Appropriate lessons for appropriate ages.
Well, and also their interests.
Yeah, just like
their
what Edric said, right?
So my daughter is learning Shakespeare at this age, but because it's not because she has to, but because she's interested in it. She found out, she knows the stories. So we recently read Shakespeare, and I studied Shakespeare in high school.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
she's able to grasp. She's able to understand the story, but because it's something that she's interested in.
Yeah.
Not because she's forced to understand it. So
Yeah.
Interested. Yeah.
yes.
I know a lot of moms also who plan to do homeschooling. Like most, the question that parang they want to ask usually, or what they ask my mom or like the people that homeschool is like, how do you start? Like how's the schedule of the kids when you homeschool?
Is it also a customized schedule based on your schedule as an educator?
Yeah, is it the same schedule every day? Do you just do Monday, Wednesday, Friday?
It really depends on the family dynamic. So I'm sure Kay, who has a younger daughter, has more flexibility, right? When you're doing homeschooling, and the same with us when my daughter was younger. But now that she's older and I need to work in the afternoons, we have a structured day, and she has activities also in the afternoons, and we have days when she doesn't have class with me because she goes out to other classes. She has other classes. She has music class and ballet class outside. So there are families who do the opposite. Afternoon naman sila because they do chores in the morning or the family
Again, it's all tailor fit,
yes.
no?
Yeah. It depends on your
Right.
That's the beauty.
If you have younger kids, the schedule will be more flexible because it depends on their mood, their temperament.
May ganun pa.
Right.
Define younger kids. What is younger
Like
kids?
for me, in my case, I have a 3-year-old daughter.
That's right.
So in the morning, she's not too interested yet, especially when she wakes up in the morning. You couldn't force her to, open a book and study on her own, or maybe just play with her. It's nothing that you could force into her. But throughout the day, like mid to later afternoon to early evening, and she would initiate on her own and say, Nanay, I want to read books.
Oh, wow.
I want to play. Now, can we homeschool? I love homeschool. She'd say that. So I guess it's really dependent on the time, their temperament, their mood, how they're feeling. Ganon.
So am I right to say that it's like a child-led thing if you're starting it at a young age?
For now, yeah. Yeah, if you're starting very early, yeah.
I used to do what I call night schooling with my daughter when she was in preschool.
Night schooling?
Yes, because I worked full-time when she was younger. So we do school.
Night school.
At night.
So you can still homeschool if you've been working the whole day, right?
It's definitely more challenging. But in the convention tomorrow, we have a speaker who is a full-time working corporate mom. Homeschooling for kids.
What?
Wow. Okay.
At what time of the day?
I know. So that's what she'll be sharing tomorrow in the one of the plenary panel talks tomorrow.
Oh, that's so nice. Okay, so we've been getting a lot of questions about homeschooling today for this episode. If you have any, again, you can tweet us. It's at The Mother Show PH. You can also call us up. We have Kay and San here who are both homeschooling moms, and maybe they can answer some of your questions.
Yeah. So when it comes to somebody here online is asking, how do you? So you have a curriculum, right? Or you have a module that you follow for homeschool. How about like the extracurricular activities? Is that on your own, or is that already part of maybe Homeschool Global or a community? How does that work?
So some families get that from their homeschool providers. Some families like me, what I do is I connect with friends who are also homeschoolers, and we have joint classes together. My daughter goes to ballet in a traditional school, so there are some enrichment activity providers who are also open to homeschoolers. So
Yeah.
that's something to explore also. So there are a lot of options, really. Too much. I always say there's too many options. And it's really a matter of, again, deliberating within your family. Where do we want our resources to go?
Tailor fit.
Did you ever, like, for example, you can't explain something to your kids? Do you go to YouTube and
You
do be
Google.
Like, okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yan yata yung beauty of it because
Because you learn with them.
Technology, right?
Yes,
And
and it's also
technology.
important for the children to know that we are not the source of all knowledge.
Okay, yeah.
It's okay not to know everything.
yeah.
And what's important is that you know how to look for answers to your questions.
Yeah.
Being resourceful. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, because I know your kid is 9 and you still have a young kid, but when it comes to like high school and you start on algebra or you start on
Algorithms, trigonometry.
trigonometry. Like, what's your plans? Do you plan to get a tutor? Do you plan to relearn that again?
I wouldn't mind relearning everying, but I think hopefully, as I told you, if you love learning,
If you love
you have
learning.
a future in this. But what some families do
Yeah,
is
they get a tutor.
Yeah, some families
I'd
get
probably
a
do
tutor.
that.
Yeah,
Because math.
yeah,
It's
there's
not
nothing wrong
really-
with- because it's better for somebody who's really knowledgeable and something to teach your children versus yung nagpe-pretend ka lang that you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maturo mo pa yung mali, di ba? Oh
And
my gosh.
also, by the time they reach that stage, hopefully, they're already independent learners, in that they already know how to study for themselves. So it's really basically a matter of tutoring them.
Yeah.
Just reinforcing the learning.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Is there any techniques into teaching your kids how to like learn by themselves or like homeschooling at home?
Well, right now, what we do is that I try to let her have her own reading time. As simple as that.
By herself.
Yeah,
Okay.
you let her you let her do things on her own, little by little, like 10 minutes of her reading time on her own,
And
say,
this is the stage, right? 3?
yeah,
This
right,
is the stage.
right.
Yeah.
This is a perfect stage.
Yeah.
And I would tell her, Nana's gonna read by your side. I'm gonna read my own book while you read your own book.
Okay.
So we're reading side by side.
Yeah.
And this is a way for me to introduce to her that, you can do your thing on your own
Yeah.
while I do my own stuff. Yeah. And eventually training her to be more independent as we
Yes.
move along.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I noticed that at this stage. He's been spending like time. He has his own world.
Mm-hmm.
Galing.
Yeah.
This is where it starts.
Yeah.
It's a tricky stage.
And you have to really be
tricky
patient, when it comes to
True.
homeschooling.
Is that your biggest
I saw the face.
should I ask it?
Go!
Because
So-
I'm not the most patient person in the world. So,
You're not the only homeschooling mother who said that. There have been other like less patient mothers who admit that it's really a tough job. So I was just gonna ask, what is the toughest thing about homeschooling? Is it actually paghugot ng patience? Is it?
Yeah, I guess because it's actually homeschooling kasi and teaching our children is not just us, no, but every parent. It's a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
So I guess it's not just for homeschooling parents that we need extra patience. But yeah, I would say it's one of the more difficult things for me.
Yeah, because you've been doing it for like 9 years, right?
Right.
Sorry,
right.
Ricky. Yeah. Hello?
Go ahead, Del.
Oh, yeah. I was just, while hearing you guys talk, it's so funny because teaching our children is so, you have to have a lot of patience and it takes an emotional toll on you. Because it's not just an exercise where you try to guide the kid into learning.
Yeah.
There is an emotional component to it. Because you're the mom. So you're more invested in your child learning than the teacher in school, right?
Yeah.
But of course, it's easier to and this is the truth, it's easier to just pay someone to deal with it.
No, and it's just a better idea to send them off for a few hours so that you can have time for yourself at home. I mean, am I right? Is that makes sense, right?
Yeah, do you remember Ali Wong? Ali Wong said that.
Yes.
She was talking about how she has to pay someone to take care. She has to work so that she can pay someone to take care of her child.
Yeah. So I guess, do you still have that at home? Can you still lounge around I'm gonna ask this to Kay because Kay, you have a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's medyo
a crazy
dependent.
phase.
Yeah,
Yeah,
medyo
yeah.
dependent
Super
pa sila
clingy.
sa'yo.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, if you're homeschooling, do you still have those days where you can just lounge around?
I guess with my stage right now, the key person talaga is my husband.
Oh,
If the husband does not step in and offer help, I wouldn't have my free time because she's practically very clingy and she nurses on me, so she needs me. So everywhere I go, I tag her along. Even if I tell her we have ballet class today, you know, it has to be me and have to be doing the bar class with her because she needs me. So I guess if the husband steps in and says, you know, it's your time, it's your personal time right now, just lounge around and catch up on your movies.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a question for both our
Yes,
guests.
when they're asleep.
Go ahead, Del.
Are they both still working? And if not, what were their jobs before?
Okay. Go ahead, Kay.
Okay. I used to work. I'm now a stay-at-home mother, but I used to work in an HR job. Well, yeah, I did HR job for 7 years around that time. 7. But
Okay.
Okay.
I used to be an IT professional, so I still work from home now. So I do the conventions. I'm part of the organizing team of the conventions, and I also have the Learning Basket. It's an online store and a parent.
Yes, I heard.
Yeah. Yes.
The Learning Basket.
Oh, we guessed it. We guessed it. The Learning
Yes,
Basket.
yes.
Is it the founder that we had on the show?
Yes, Marielle was here several years ago. She talked about positive discipline, if I'm not mistaken.
Another hot
Right,
topic.
right.
Another hot topic.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, I have questions here on Instagram. Sep Ong says, how do you find kids who could tutor your kids?
Kids that could tutor your kids?
How do you find the people?
The people.
Sorry, that
Hello,
could
kids.
tutor your kids?
Are they also part of the groups?
Yeah.
The groups.
Yeah,
I
there are
think
groups.
there are parents who offer tutorial services to homeschooling families also. So, but I don't know anyone. There are support services that offer tutorial sessions. So
Yeah.
there are several groups where you can actually send your children once a week, and they have different lessons with other children. So
I think that's what my sisters did, because
hybrid program.
yeah, they did the hybrid program. Can you explain what the hybrid program is?
So basically, they homeschool their children at home, and then send them to the center once a week, and they have different. I think they can choose which subjects to enroll in.
Oh, nice.
So
So may
together
ganun
with others.
din.
Yeah.
See,
So
this is
half
the side.
home,
Yeah,
half,
this is the side of
school.
homeschool that you don't know about.
Right?
Right, yeah,
So
this
it's
is
called
the-
hybrid.
Hybrid programs or tutorials, homeschool tutorial services.
Okay.
It's 11:36. If you have any question about homeschooling, like now would be the best
Yes.
time to ask them. So again, thank you for sending in your questions. It's at the Mother Show PH in 6310899. Rosh commented on our live stream saying, "I need to share more of this with my husband. When and where is the homeschooling convention?"
The convention is tomorrow.
It's tomorrow, Rosh.
in SMX Aura.
Okay.
SMX Convention Center in Aura, SM Aura Taguig.
And you
So,
can still get tickets to
Yeah,
this.
Yes.
walk in,
Register.
right? Yeah, I guess I'll walk in.
Walk in, guys.
How much are the tickets?
Yes.
walk-in rate is 1,200 for all the talks. So we have plenary sessions in the morning and then breakout sessions in the afternoon.
Oh.
And
Wow.
I love how she said it, so I could share more with my
Yeah.
husband. Because it's usually the women that decide to homeschool. So how do you...
I know, yun nga, it requires a lot of patience.
And you don't... Okay.
Yung kanina, actually, mga nasagot na eh. Pero, ang sinasabi ko kay wife, you wanna homeschool kids, pero you wanna work as well. That cannot be possible.
Oh, hold on. We actually have a corporate mom who's speaking at the convention tomorrow who has a full-time corporate job, Nair, and she also homeschools her 4 children. It's possible.
And then, sige. Andun na ako. Pero,
sige.
Meron kaninang siningit si ma'am, yung guest.
Yes.
Alimutan ko yung name, sorry.
Kay and Sam,
7K.
go ahead.
Pero, pag walang support ni husband, mahihirapan.
Are you saying you're not willing to support, Nair?
Yes, I am. I am very much willing. I actually have my eldest undersped siya kasi ASD.
Okay.
So, the good thing about my job right now is I'm on sales. I'm on field work.
Okay.
That's why, kumbaga, parang yung 8 hours ko nagagamit ko sa yung iba para sa paghatid sundo sa school, sa son ko. What if bumalik ako sa IT industry or sa IT industry and then office-based siya na ang situation namin, parehas kaming field work and my wife works in a government. So, how can it be possible for us to do homeschool? Meron ako narinig kanina doing the night homeschool. Parang patayan yun.
Sige, wait lang, Nair. Si San will answer your question.
Nag-work for us yung night schooling because one, my daughter was younger. Preschool lang. So sa preschool, 30 minutes matagal na yung as in structured time. Matagal na talaga yun. So nag-work sa amin when she was younger. Two, kasi yung daughter ko at the time, parang yung daughter ni Kay, active siya towards the latter part of the day.
Okay.
So kung hindi ganun yung temperament nga ng bata, of course, iba yung dynamic. And if you're in an 8 to 5 job with traffic pa 2 hours going home, talagang patayan talaga yun. So, yung kailangan rin talaga i-assess what works best for your family.
I see.
I think, can I talk to the caller? Can the caller hear me, Ricky? Andy?
Nair, can you hear Del? Yes, okay. Go ahead, Del.
Okay, so Nair, so the objective of the show is really to just show parents and other people who might be interested na this is an option. So it's not for everybody. And obviously may mga parents kasi na hindi talaga yan ang forte nila. 'Di ba? Hindi rin yan ang they don't have the support system like you said, and they might not have the money for it, like yung ganon. So hindi siya, it's not being forced on anyone. But what we are saying by way of the show is, Nair, na this is an option. Ito ay isang bagay na it exists out in the world. And so these are the many testimonials of moms and dads who have been going through it. And this might work for you. For your situation, baka hindi siya mag-work for many reasons. And that's okay, diba?
Yeah. But I really want to convince myself, pero nahihirapan din ako para sa sarili ko.
Big hug, Nair. It's a sacrifice. I feel like
really,
it's a big decision.
Honest, yun. Kumbaga, kinukonvince ko yung sarili ko. Kasi ako, kahit sino naman sa atin, mas matututo yung anak natin sa atin. Kesa ipagkatiwala natin sa iba. But the thing is, yung katulad kanina, lumabas na rin yung sa guest natin na mahirap maging pasinsosyo.
True.
Diba?
True.
Yung ganun.
Yeah, I get it, Nair. I get it. I guess you really have to talk to your wife, no?
Yeah, we're talking about it, pero minsan iniiwasan ko.
But I love that you called.
And you're so honest.
I really need to read. Kahit na yung may friends nga, katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, umiiwas ako kasi siguro this is not yet the time, pero I'm interested. I want my other, or yung mga children ko ma-homeschool din.
Hey, the mere fact that, we were saying kanina, the first step to learning about it is to immerse yourself in what it's all about, attend these conventions, and I think it's an excellent first step that you called us and you asked us these questions.
I'm actually thinking about him tomorrow.
Yes, you should.
I heard that he has a kid with ASD. We also have a speaker tomorrow speaking together with a full-time working mom who is homeschooling special needs children.
Did you hear that, Nair? Did you hear that, Nair? This is for you. Yeah. If this isn't a sign, I don't know what it is. But yeah, Nair,
go for it.
We hope that we answered your questions.
Yes.
And we'll see you tomorrow.
Yes.
The convention.
Drive safe, okay?
Drive safe, Nair.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Nair.
It's 11:46.
Okay, I have a lot of questions. A lot of people are flooding our Instagram. Somebody goes, "Can you homeschool and do traditional school at the same time?"
At the same time.
There's actually something called after schooling that some parents do. Trina, who was here,
Yes,
last
DIY
week, right?
corporate mom.
Yes, DIY corporate mom actually does something like it. So after schooling is basically doing homeschooling after school. So doing interest-led homeschooling, a lot of play-based learning after school. So I think that's what she means. It's called after schooling.
Yeah.
I can say that I'm like that.
Me too.
So my children are going to an outside school, like when we were in the Philippines and now. But then at home, the things that we learn about, me and Cooper, for example, it really has to be led by his interest. And so my homeschooling style is teaching him about what he's interested in. And currently, he's interested in aliens. So, yun ang medyo. But it's possible. There is, ganun ako. I want to get the best of both worlds, I guess.
So is it safe to say that we're all homeschoolers?
Yes.
Yes.
I think teaching our children is really an extension of parenting.
Yeah. Spending time with them and getting to know their, playing up to their interests and teaching them what they like. That is homeschooling. So technically, if you spend intentional time with your child, you are homeschooling.
Yes.
Because parents are their children's first and best teacher.
First and best. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. This one is from Christine Olivar. She goes, "Hi, I'm tuned in. Question about documents that will help track progress of homeschooled kids, like quizzes, homeworks, tests, when they decide to send their kids to regular or traditional school. Are there providers that can help with that, or independent homeschoolers have to do it on their own?"
Providers will definitely help with that. So there are Edric was here for Homeschool Global earlier, right? So each provider has different requirements in terms of monitoring and assessment. But the bulk of it really is dependent on the parent. So it's the parent who grades and gives the quizzes and exams if you are enrolled in a homeschool provider. So otherwise, there are ways for independent homeschoolers to get back into the traditional school system. Yeah. So they have to take exams from that end. But there are ways, yes.
Wow.
Interesting.
We have a question off of Facebook. Andy is asking, how do you manage to be a homemaker and a homeschooler? Is that something that's possible?
How do you manage everything?
That's definitely possible. I guess what worked for me is without a yaya who helps me around the house. No, so I guess what helps is really scheduling your time. You're not expected to homeschool your child throughout the day.
Yeah.
It has to be like pockets of time, pockets of learning. You have to go through it, scheduling your time. What do you do this time? What do you do by that time? And I guess what really helped me is that I'm able to involve her and teach her life skills at the same time. And that's part of homeschooling already, right? So it doesn't have to be all throughout the day. Just pockets of learning and pockets of time for you.
Yeah, because you're not, again, homeschooling is not just teaching them
7 to
academics.
3.
No, it's not. And it's not all academics, right? It's not all academics. You're teaching them, you put it best, life lessons talaga.
No, because also like when you go to work or when you do the grocery, that could already be like a learning experience for them, right?
Yeah, that's true.
See, Kay, you're an advocate of that management,
right?
App, right?
App. That's called management.
Management. So management, but like money.
Okay. Yeah, with the plain words.
Yeah, right there. See, it's an app.
Right.
Can you tell us? I'm so interested in this management app.
So this is an app that I've been using for over a year now, and it's been helping me as a homemaker because there are features in the app that allows me to pay bills and government mandated benefits, not just for me but also for people in the household and team members of the business that we have. So I get to be able to pay for their contributions without actually stepping out of the house. Because you know how it is, the travel and everything. Logistically, it's crazy when you have to bring your toddler with you. Sobrang magulo. So what I do is that I try to utilize the app. And the app has been very amazing for me because now you can send and you can make payments through the app, which is within your hand's reach. Yeah. And not just that, there's also a feature where you could send money. There's also another feature where you could pay your utility bills. Yeah. And that's, for me, that's the best part. You get to pay your bills without, lining up in the payment centers and, banks.
Money. So, you guys should check it out. Management.
It is both on iOS and Android phones. So it's very easy to maneuver. It's very easy to navigate through.
You guys should check it out. Again, it's Management, MONEYGMENT. It's 11:51. Wow, we're almost out of time.
I know.
But we have Kay and San. Really quickly though, can you just remind everybody about that big convention that's happening tomorrow?
Yes, we'd like to invite everyone to the Philippine Homeschool Convention. No Place Like Home. It will be tomorrow at the SMX Convention Center, SM Aura in Taguig.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
See you tomorrow. Yeah.
See you tomorrow, and we'll post it online as well. Again,
Yes.
the Mother Show PH. We are live on Facebook. If you guys want to revisit or you want to convince your husband, tell them to listen to this episode. And one last question, and this is from Will and Tan. She goes, is there a professional group or teacher that can homeschool specifically if parents are working?
So do they have these kinds of tutors, teachers at the convention as well?
Or do you recommend that the parents be the one to teach
this is
it?
full-on tutor yung
yun
hanap,
nga
no?
Yeah, so the concept of homeschooling really is the parents being hands-on. But then some choose to get
Outsource
tutors.
it.
Yeah, especially for difficult subjects.
Yeah. Has there ever been like a solid just tutor? No parents involved? Homeschool?
Yeah, I've heard of some families.
Again, tailor fit to you.
Yeah.
You do you, guys.
Yes,
you do
do
you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
I'm
again,
not sure about professional tutors specifically for homeschooling. So I haven't heard about
It's just more on the subjects. Depends on the subject.
Yes.
yeah.
And the hybrid
Yes.
centers.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many questions.
I
that you can-
know.
But again, like Nair, who called us earlier with his kids in his car, you just have to keep asking questions. Again, make the most out of your time. There's a big convention happening tomorrow. There are so many moms nowadays who you can reach out to online who are homeschooling their kids, and you can.
Is there like a community on Facebook? Because there are different groups like breastfeeding groups.
Yeah.
Is there one for
Support.
Actually,
homeschooling?
several.
A lot of it.
Yeah. So there's homeschool. The biggest one is Homeschoolers of the Philippines.
Okay.
And then it has expanded or parang
Subgroups.
subgroups. It has subgroups like the homeschoolers, teens and tweens,
Okay.
and homeschooling the early years for those with preschoolers. And then there's a group for Christians. There's a group for Roman Catholics. So group for Bacolod, Davao.
Oh, nice.
Areas.
Chapters.
Right.
All these communities.
So you just have to search for it on Facebook.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, Delamar,
Yes, Rick.
do you have any other questions?
Follow up.
I don't know if this is like a comment or a question.
Go ahead.
But parang lahat ng guests natin na nag-homeschool, their children do so well and above and beyond their grade level compared to the traditional school. And a lot of success stories. I was wondering if there was a failure story.
You know what, Del?
Have you heard of people who gave up?
I
Or
was just thinking the same thing. Like, all of the parents that we've met who've homeschooled, they never say, oh my God, homeschool is such a bitch. Don't homeschool your children. They're all like, I love homeschool. I've never looked back. Diba, nobody says, oh my God, don't homeschool your children.
Yes.
It's the worst. Diba, nobody...
It's
I've
always
never heard
positive,
of it.
diba?
I've never heard. Now, you...
Or maybe they don't say it out loud.
Yeah.
Unless you're with a group of moms
Right.
who homeschool as well. I'm sure it's like, I'm so impatient, my child doesn't want to learn, or like,
so
they're not
hard.
behaving.
Yeah.
I think it depends also who you're talking to, diba?
And there are good days and bad days.
Right.
Yeah.
There are good days.
Good days and bad days, good years, bad years, and some parents choose to put their children back to traditional school,
Yeah.
and that's fine.
So meron din. May
Yeah.
mga nagsiswitch.
I guess
This is not for
and
me.
again, depends. Yes, it's not for
Try it out for a
them.
year, and then if not,
Yeah.
for
go back
them.
to school.
Or there are different seasons. They suddenly have to
go to work.
full time,
Right.
or go somewhere. I mean,
Yeah.
travel,
Yeah.
things like that. So it's really, I think that's also part of the flexibility of homeschooling. You can choose to pull your kids out of school and then
Yeah.
bring them back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Depending on your family dynamics. Again.
And
Just taking it one day at a
this
time.
this one is from AJ Twisted. Is that how I say it? Anyway, he goes, me and my wife are homeschooling our daughter for years now based on Waldorf Steiner curriculum. Did I say that right? He says, any thoughts on this?
I am not too familiar with the philosophy.
Neither am I.
I
Okay.
know lang it's,
There are different
Yeah.
philosophies they follow. Yeah.
I know it's
Mm.
very close to Montessori, and it's big on like, nature, going
Outdoors. Yeah.
But I know they have a homeschool curriculum, I think.
Okay.
I see. Okay. I just got a message. There's stories that they put their child back in traditional. like ano and ano. But yeah, they do now. They do. So it happens. It's just, I guess, we've never really met them. But it's such a, it'll make you think, no? Once, especially this episode, if you guys have been listening since Edric and his son Elijah, and now we have Kayang and San Wunson, you think about it eh. Parang, nga no, if you want to mold your children to be who you want them to be, it makes sense that you do it yourself.
Yeah, but that's if you have time
and patience.
Yeah.
And your parenting style.
And your parenting. That's true. Yeah. And your parenting and your parenting style is a big factor as well.
Kasi I think homeschooling is under the umbrella of a kind of parenting that is very, 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 very involved.
Yes,
very involved. Yeah. Super involved.
So I guess it's really, it doesn't work for everybody, but it's a viable option, especially in the Philippines where we see traffic is getting out of hand and our children are trapped in traffic instead of learning or playing.
Yeah.
Diba? And the rising costs of education. So this is becoming a viable option for parents out there.
Yeah.
It is.
I love how it's making everybody think.
Yes.
Like Nair.
And us.
Yeah, and that's why we have to close the show. So
Oh my goodness. Okay, so if you guys want to learn more about homeschooling, there's a convention tomorrow, and also there's this whole episode. This episode, season 5, episode 3. It will be up on YouTube. It will be up on Facebook. So if you want to revisit any question that we talked about earlier about academics, about how much homeschooling is, diba? Like, it's all here in this episode.
It is. Again, facebook.com/magic89.9. And we'll release all of those snippets on YouTube as well. Kay, San, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks again. Is there anything else you'd like to plug in terms of homeschooling? Any seminars?
I think that's about it. Just, we'll see that tomorrow.
Yeah. As again,
homeschooling month, you should really declare it. Right? September should be
There's a
homeschooling
National
month.
Homeschooling Day. Homeschoolers Day. March 3.
Meron pala.
Now let's make it March.
Let's make it March then. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you, guys.
For being here.
We've got that Mommy Magic, the Mother Show on Magic 89.9.